Hey, what's going on, everyone? Good evening, good evening. Give everyone just a few minutes and then we will get started. Hey, Leah. Hey, Joey. Hey, David. Robert, how's it going, man? How's it going, guys? Welcome in. Let's go ahead and jump into it, guys. These are recorded, so this one's going to be a little bit different, though, because what I want to do on this Sunday scan is basically give you guys an idea of maybe how I build my watch lists. So what I neglected to do prior to the scan was actually do any type of scans, right? So what I want to do is actually just run you guys through my entire process of how I were to, like, if I were to build a watch list going into the week. I want you guys to kind of see my thought process and what I look for, really, at least in the next 30 minutes that we have. And then, as always, I want to give you guys some time at the end to maybe ask some questions or throw some charts up, and we can do some charting in the last part of the Sunday scan. Hey, MJ. So let's go ahead and jump into it, guys. We did have Powell on Friday, and on SPY, one of the things that I noticed, I didn't, obviously I wasn't trading, I had the golf outing, but one of the things I noticed was at that key level, that 417.55 that I had given you guys on SPY, actually held pretty well, right? Like this level held pretty well. This is we came down to it a few times and it held every single time we got to it. So it does look like there has been a support resistance flip now, right? Because 417, this was an area, if you guys look, prior resistance, we pop over it, now it's support, right? And that's bullish in the short term, right? Prior resistance the day before, then we finally get over it, right? So naturally, what happens when we drop out of consolidation, we come back and we test that very next, that same level that we were at, on the day before. And so these are just small patterns that you guys will start to get with screen time, but this is exactly like the type of pattern that we want to see for bullish momentum moving forward, right? Hey, Sunil, how's it going, brother? What's up, Hummel? This is exactly what we're looking for, right? So prior resistance, break through it, we consolidate, we come back down, we test it as support, and it holds, right? So this does look like a resistance, now support flip. Was a little bearish up here, we broke through it, and now a little bullish, right? So now what I'd be looking for is that move back up to 420 and then 424 back to the upside here. I don't know if what Powell said, obviously they didn't sell us all the way back down to 414. We held that 417.55. And if we zoom back out on the daily time frame on SPY, I do think, guys, if you look here at the daily, a lot of people, myself included, said that this was going to be an area right here, right? You guys can see this 415 area. If we put a line right here, right? 415.72, okay? We'd have a rejection here, right? We'd have a rejection here on April 18th, this red candle. And then we'd have a buyer exhaustion candle on that uptrend, right? Push up, buyer exhaustion. The next 2 days we saw all the way down, right? That would have been a nice short, nice 2-day short there when we saw that buyer exhaustion candle because we got a nice move down that next day. So these are, these daily candle patterns are ones to pay attention to when we get to the end of the day. Just take a look at the daily candle just to see what the daily looks like, right? Because this was a nice short on this candle to push all the way back down, right? All the way up here at 415, all the way down. The low of this candle is 403. So a nice, $12 move down in 2 days. That probably paid the bills really well there. But what I wanted to say though is that like historically, right, like back in February, we had rejected this area, this 415.72. Rejection, fell all the way back down, right, all the way down to 380. We rejected again, fell all the way back down to 400. Rejected again, fell all the way back down to 400, and we've held, right? So now it looks like 400 is starting to, like that 404, 403 spot. If we lose 403, I think we fall back down below 400. But right now, it looks like we're holding that area. And more specifically, that 414 or 415.72, if we look at that, look at the big volume stick on this day, on the 18th, when we got over 415, right? So if we go back, we look here, there was a ton of volume, guys, when we got over 415, when we got over 415.72, right? We pushed up, we came back down, and where do we bounce at down here, right? 415.60, 415.65. We use that on the 30-minute to push up all the way through that, 419 area on the 30-minute chart. And on the daily chart, right, that was a big push through that level, right? That 415.72, that was a big spot, right? And when we finally pushed over, we got a nice big candle, and then we even touched 420.72. Now, we haven't been to 420. We haven't been up to 420 since, all the way, it had to be all the way back here, right? The last time we were at 420 was August 18th of 2022. And you guys can see where we went up to, right? 420, 439, 437. So that's why when I turn my levels on, like this is a key level that I have up here, 420, 434. And then if we get over that, obviously 430 is the next spot up. Over that, guys, we really have room up here to probably about the 440 area. And then over 440, not much room after that, right? We probably make a stop at 454, and then on the daily, it's all-time high after that. But understand that we're only 15 points away from all-time high right now, right? $50 away, not 15, 50. So looking at the weekly chart, right? If we take the levels off here, on the weekly chart, this is the key spot on the weekly that we're gonna have to get over. We need a weekly candle close over this candle here, this high, which is 421.91. So a weekly candle close over 422, I think, sends us back to this pivot here on the weekly at 445, right? 445, and then over 445, if we get over that, then I think we go up and we get all-time high. Now, I'm not saying run and buy calls, and that's what we're playing here. That's where it's going to go. I have no idea what's going to happen, but price action, that's what we're going to use to try and figure out where we're heading to. And I do think that if we get up over 422 on the weekly, I think we do push to the next weekly level, which is going to be at about 445, and then over 445, 470. So we just need to see if these levels play out, right? But if we look back at QQQ, we talked about this, right? Like, look at tech. Tech has broken out on the weekly, and we talked about tech carrying the markets in 2023, right? I talked about the fact that, we were down here, right? I remember we were down here in this 308 range, right? And I said, hey, if we can push up, if we can get going here out of that daily wedge that we were in, we were going to push 315 and then 320, 330. That was kind of my upside targets, right? Well, if you look at the weekly time frame, we talked about coming up to this weekly pivot right here, right, at 328.85. Well, what happened this week is we blew right through that weekly pivot. We got a massive move up on the weekly, and you guys can see where we kind of hit on the weekly, right? We hit right back here on this weekly time frame, kind of from that, February, March of April of 2021, kind of right back in here. This is the spot, that we kind of came to right here. So if we can get up over this spot here, I do see us pushing up, and I could see us moving in tech all the way up to 360 on QQQ. Lots going to be determined on individual names. We can get into some individual names in a little bit. But just wanted to give you guys my overall thesis, my overall thoughts on kind of SPY and QQQ. We could also look at DJI and see what the Dow Jones is doing. Dow Jones is doing relatively well, all things being considered. When we talk about the fact on the weekly time frame of kind of like where we've been at and what we've done, the Dow hasn't really gotten hit as much as as tech and as S&P has. The Dow on the daily time frame, I think looks kind of we're putting in this recovery spot here, and I think if the Dow can get up over 34.5, the Dow's got room up probably into around that 35.5, and then above that, probably 36.5, and then all-time highs on the Dow. So just something to think about. I wanted to talk about indices with you guys before we got started. Wanted to show you kind of some things that we were looking at here. SPY looks constructive. QQQ looks constructive. QQQ looks more constructive than SPY, actually, because tech is stronger. But we talked about that, right? We talked about the fact that semiconductors were leading the way. You know, when we look at what NVIDIA did last week, when we look at what we did with AMD last week, we traded those names really, really well. Semiconductors did very, very well. So let's take a look at the semiconductors first, knowing how we traded them and what they did. Let's look at the daily here on NVIDIA. And you know, my oh my, what a recovery on NVIDIA, all the way from 108 back in October of 2022, guys, less than a year. You know, really only 8 months ago, 7 months ago on NVIDIA, 108 all the way up to, you know, 318 on Thursday, and an inside day on Friday. Looks like this could be consolidating for another move up. We'll have to see, but we haven't gotten a true buyer exhaustion candle on NVIDIA. Now, if we look at the daily time frame, we did get one, right? There is one on this chart that I see since the march up, you know, from the beginning of the year, right? But here's the beginning of the year, and we've just gone straight vertical on NVIDIA. The one buyer exhaustion candle that I have seen on NVIDIA on the daily time frame was this one right here, right? On March 22nd. This is in an uptrend. We have a big upwick, and then it stopped here. This would have been one that you could potentially short back down with the a leap. This is where you take a month, 2 month out contract on the daily time frame setup and potentially short this back down, seeing that there is some buyer exhaustion, right? You know, tried to push us up, couldn't push us up, came back down. You know, using the top of this wick as your stop limit, didn't get hit. You know, didn't get hit here, didn't get hit here, didn't get hit here. You could have seen a little bit of positive, you know, moves there, but for the most part, you know, NVIDIA has just been so strong. You know, it's trading at 175x price to earnings, you know, right now. So PE ratio is super high. I don't know how much higher this can go in that stance. So I do think that people are going to start to accumulate some shorts at some point here on NVIDIA. I mean, guys, we're only $30 away from, you know, from all-time highs on NVIDIA at 346 that we hit back in, what is that, November 22nd of 2021. We're now trading at a level on NVIDIA, guys, that we have not been to since, you know, December of 2021. So it has been a long time on NVIDIA since we've been up here, but we can still play these levels. We played the levels very well in NVIDIA to get up to this point, and if you guys look at the daily time frame, you see that flat top resistance. You might not be able to see it here with the levels that I have on, but what I can do is hide my levels, and I can kind of show you the setup that we kind of got on NVIDIA. Let me just, let's do this again, because I know this is kind of how I show you guys. It's a little bit easier for you to see it when I do this. But if we do this, let me show you what I'm kind of looking at here on NVIDIA, just so you guys can get used to kind of seeing some of these, you know, some of these setups on your own, right? And so what I'm kind of looking at here is this flat top resistance, and then if I copy paste that, you know, we had a really nice consolidation pattern here going on NVIDIA from about right here, right? You know, if you look at that, we kind of had a trend line up and then, you know, a breakout on that trend, and you know, from here, right, pushed all the way 295, and then, you know, days later we're up at, you know, 312, 318. And so you can find these patterns too, and this is exactly what I'm talking about, finding these patterns. You know, this is horizontal resistance, which, you know, Darth talks about a lot, but we had resistance here in the past, right? Back in April of 2022. We came back to it, you know, basically in May of 2022, and we broke up through it, and we pushed up to that next pivot point at about 318, 320 area on NVIDIA. So these are patterns, guys, that you can see happen and you can see play out in real time, right? But if we put that line there, you know, it's not hard to see, right? The 292 spot, we rejected it once, twice, you know, multiple times on the daily time frame, and then we finally got the daily candle close over it. 2 days later, guys, we moved from 292 to 320 or 318, right? So big spot. And that's the kind of, those are the types of things that I want you guys to be able to start seeing, and you'll see that the more screen time that you have. Now let's take a look at AMD, because AMD is another one that trades along in the same name, right? $54 a share back in October, now pushing up to 105, and we did hit 108 on Thursday. It had an inside day as well, so it looks like a little bit of consolidation here. But you can see on AMD on the daily time frame, we do have some resistance here up at 108 back from June of 2022 right in here. Now, if we can get over this, I think this is where AMD does make that move up to about 116. Over 116, I think we can get 123 on AMD. But we're going to have to get, 108, 109. Once we get that and we get that daily candle close, I think we could play momentum up to 116 because I think that comes next. And you guys have seen AMD move really, really well lately. I think this could be a massive, massive mover for us, and we could see a really, really nice move out of AMD. Now the weekly, if we go to the weekly, take a look at what the weekly looks like on AMD. It's putting in some recovery, right? We're putting in some recovery candles, and this is going to be a big spot, guys, because I think if we get that weekly candle close over 108, which you saw we rejected here, this could be the spot on AMD. We could reject and head back down. But if we can get over 108 on the weekly, I think that's where we make that move up, and I think we get that 123 on a weekly time frame. That's kind of what I'll be looking for on AMD, larger time picture settings here, okay? Now what I want to talk about is Apple, because Apple is the big one that I think, kind of moves the market. On the weekly, guys, we're at a pivotal spot, right? Because we are now over where we rejected last time. The last candle that we had on the weekly time frame, we hit 175.35, right? We hit 176.39. We close on Friday at 175.16. So if Apple wants to reject, this is where it's going to reject. The interesting thing that I've seen on Apple, though, is that Apple usually gives us a signal when it's going to reject, right? If we look at the Apple weekly time frame, this week we got the week of April 1st, 2022, we got a daily shooting star candle, right? Here's that big wick on top with the candle body below it. Means that buyers tried to push us up. They got exhausted. Sellers stepped in, right? And then sellers took us all the way back down, right? From 175 all the way down to 130, okay? Weeks later, right? This is in April, and then by, July, middle of June, we were down at 130, okay? Same thing happened, though, if we look at the weekly. Once we hit this low down here around 130, we pushed all the way back up, right? 130 has been a pivotal spot for Apple. They've kind of held that 130 area really, really well. Or more specifically the 128, 130, let's call it a demand zone on Apple. We saw them take it here in June. They pushed us all the way back up to 175 again. And what happened? We got another shooting star candle, right? Another buyer exhaustion. Tried to push us up, pulled us down, and then from there we came all the way back down to the demand zone. Interestingly enough, this week I wouldn't call this a shooting star candle, right? This is a pretty good candle. Now, it's not the biggest in terms of weekly volume on Apple, but what it is, it is a bullish candle. This is a more bullish candle than it is bearish. So I'd like to see one more weekly candle on Apple to see if we do get this weekly high or all-time high on Apple at 181. We are $6 away from all-time high on Apple. I think if we get over 181, we're going to have to do some price discovery and figure out, what the next levels are on the way up. But I could see something like 185 being a pretty big area. 190, obviously 200 is going to be a pretty big psych level. We could play off of 200. But this is Apple. Apple looks very, very constructive on the weekly time frame because it finally looks like this week we did put in, right? We put in a higher high. This weekly candle pushed all the way up to 175.35 and closed at 170.74. This weekly candle that we just had last week hit a high of 176.39 and closed at 175.16. So we hit a higher high and we closed at a higher point than we did on that prior weekly candle. This is our highest weekly candle close at 175.16 since we had the close at December 31st of 2021. Okay. So we're looking very, very good on Apple, constructive. Now, if we look at the daily time frame, some things we can look at, right? These are the patterns that I want you guys to be able to see, identify, and play. These are the patterns that historically have paid very, very well for us. Multiple times we've played patterns just like this. So let's take a look at this pattern, right? This is a pattern that we have played time and time again, and I want to show you guys what this pattern looks like again for those of you that maybe missed this pattern or just want to see it drawn again on here, right? So this is what we would call a daily consolidation pattern. What does that mean? That just means that price has traded in a range for multiple days, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days in a row, we traded in this range. When we finally broke out of this range, right, we broke out of that 174 area, we hit 176.39 the very next day. So $2 worth of range as soon as we broke out of this. Now, it's not the biggest range break that we've played, but this is a type of setup that I think pays more times than not, and this is just what we would call consolidation within a name. We saw this with XOM. We saw this with Apple. We saw it very well with Microsoft. We saw it with PayPal. We've seen it with so many names, right? We could just look at the charts to talk about this. We talked about this last week. Let's turn these back on, right? But you guys can see daily consolidation, right? $171 to $78, $7 with the range for about 2 months of trading. What happens? We break down out of that range and we fall more than $10 on a name that, is already $70 a share. So we fall about 18% on the underlying stock. XOM did the exact same thing. If we look at XOM, just for illustration purposes, we won't spend too long on this, but XOM did the same thing. Consolidation, fall down, right? If we would have held on to those puts, we would have gotten paid pretty fat on that. I think that was like a 2,000% move. We took it about 450%. That's massive gains, guys. We don't need more than that. If it happens to go that far, that's awesome. But 450% is a grand slam in my books. We don't need any more than that. And then we could look at Microsoft, because Microsoft is one that broke out to the upside, right? So we broke out of this consolidation. We were trading between basically 305 and 313. When we broke out of 313, we went all the way to 319, right, in 2 days. Pushed all the way up, and Microsoft had an inside day as well. So this could get interesting in Microsoft. We've got a lot of tech names consolidating with an inside day on Friday. Could make for a really big day or really big week this week based on the inside, names that inside bars that we've seen on these names. The other one that we looked at was CRM. Now we talked about CRM on the last few weeks on the scan, and we talked about this consolidation pattern, right? We talked about the fact that it was trading between 190 and 200. And that if we got a breakout over 200, that we probably got 210, and then over 210 we got the 218 or 220 spot. Now what happened was we pushed all the way up. We pushed up to 205, we came back down, we tested the consolidation zone again, and then we pushed out of it, meaning that we turned prior resistance, into support, which is bullish. When that happens, we can look to get long on a name, right? Prior resistance at 200, resistance at 200, break through 200, come back down, and hold 200 as now support twice, and then push up, right? We pushed up all the way to our levels. Again, inside day on CRM. So if you can see, there's a lot of inside days happening on multiple names now. Now let's take a look over on a name like Tesla, because Tesla's a name that we haven't really traded recently, but I want to see if there's anything going on Tesla right now. So far, nothing that I really see on Tesla that I really like from a daily time frame perspective. As far as like a wedge pattern or something like that, I don't really see a lot here. The only thing that I could see on Tesla, and I know this is going to be hard to see, but I just want you guys to kind of see my thought process of things that I look at and what I'm looking for. You could make an argument that there could be like a rising wedge on Tesla, but looking at it, I don't really like that. So for me, Tesla, just no actionable setups right now. But if we do get over 184, that's a big daily spot. We could see a pretty big move up on Tesla. Now let's take a look at some other names, right? Let's look at Snow, because Snow is on my watch list. We play Snow quite a bit. Let's turn the levels back on Snow and see what we got. We got another inside day on Snow, so Snow could be a big breakout spot. We've got a lot of inside days, and typically the way I like to play these inside days is to be a little cautious, but when we break the inside day, whether it's to the downside or to the upside, we do see pretty big moves down or up. MJ says that Tesla has a 1 hour wedge. Let's take a look at the 1 hour. Sometimes it turn off extended. Yeah, so Tesla, all right, so here's a good setup, actually. This could be a nice setup on the 1 hour without extended hours on. We could be getting like MJ says is a pretty nice wedge here. I'm going to do this instead. Again, I'm going to Photoshop it instead of do that, because when I turn the levels on, it's hard for you guys to see those, I think. Yeah, this could be a nice wedge setup, MJ, actually. Good point on this. Sometimes it's better to look at hourly and 30-minute. But yeah, this potentially could be setting up for a nice wedge play here. If we look at something like that, right? So Tesla could be setting up for a nice wedge break on the hourly for a nice move up. That's a great eye, MJ, and pointing out the fact that it's not always like sometimes you look at the daily and then sometimes I'll go back through these names and look at the hourly and 30-minute. If you guys remember the 30-minute setup on SPY, that's how those contracts went absolutely crazy on SPY. That consolidation pattern. So nice call, MJ, on the hourly wedge play. Just telling him thanks there. So that's Tesla's hourly. That does look really good. MJ, let's take a look at that tomorrow and see what it looks like. But if Tesla does pop tomorrow, I would be looking for a move from over that one. Let's go back here. I'd be looking for a move over this area right here, right, 181.34 on Tesla on hourly to push up probably to that 183 area. We have the level at 184. Over 184, then I think we probably make that move back up into the 186 area on Tesla. So that's a really good watch, 1 hour watch up open on Tesla, kind of to see what the hourly does. Really like that hourly setup on Tesla. Let's take a look at some names that we haven't talked about in a while, but names that have been running really well. Notably UPST. Now this is a name that I want to talk about because what we saw happen last week. We saw over $700,000 worth of calls actually purchased on this name. So if we look at the daily here, another inside day, another name with an inside day. Now, what's going to happen here for me with UPST and what I kind of like about this setup is the fact that if you look at what's kind of happened historically on UPST, right? We pushed all the way up through the 2264 level historically, right? I mean, historically, I'm talking February 2nd of 2023. The very next day, February 3rd, 2023, we got a buyer exhaustion candle, right? Buyers tried to push us up. They got exhausted. They pulled us back down. And then we came all the way back, to life, kind of to that 15 area, right? So it was a pretty big move back down on, 20 to 25% move down on UPST. Now, what's interesting to me now on UPST, look at the relative volume that we've gotten on UPST, right? The big volume, right? Now, we did have one big buy volume here. I think there was some news that came out in the middle of February. I can't remember what this one was, but almost 30 million shares traded, big volume. But notably for what's happening here for me, I'm looking at the volume down here. I'm seeing the volume, but the other thing that I'm seeing is that we got a massive candle, a massive bullish engulfing candle over 2264. We were up 15% on the day on UPST on this candle. The very next candle, right now, we were down 6%. On this candle, but what's important to me is the fact that we held, right, our low is 2268, we held 2264 on UPST, right? So if we look at the 15-minute, what did we get, right? Here's that daily level that we pushed all the way up through, right? Came down and then pushed up again, almost at 25. Then we came back down. We tested this, and again, prior resistance, we pushed through it. Now it's support. That's typically bullish, right? So I don't know where price is going to go on UPST. What I do know is that UPST has like a 35% short float, and we know that there is a whale in the tape that purchased over $700,000 worth of $30 calls expiring July 21st. So we've got about 2 months to go on that, 40 days to go on those. Typically, they're not going to put 700K on weeklies. If they do, that's where I'm going to jump in on those as well. But a whale knows something about UPST. I'm not sure what it knows. They did have positive news about their balance sheet that came out. So I want to watch UPST because when this one moves, you guys know it 14, 15, 20% in a day. And if you're on the right side of contracts when that happens, you're taking those contracts, 2, 3, 4, 500, 1,000% very, very easily. So UPST is one that I'm going to watch. Now, if we look at the 30-minute, we take off extended. Okay, now for me, actionable setups is going to be as long as we hold 2264 on UPST. If we come back down to this and we hold it, I think we push higher. And my first target obviously is going to be, that high of day or at least that, 2460 area. If we lose this 2264, you guys can see what my next target down is going to be, right? Where we had prior resistance, where we struggled to get through in the past, which is right here, 2055. Rejected, came back down, pushed off as support. Rejected one more time, pushed through. When we push through 2055, where did we go to on the 30-minute time frame? We ended up all the way back at 2264. And so that's why, guys, when I talk about my levels aren't just random levels I put on the chart. My levels are actual levels that I want when I say like if we break 2264, 2055 is coming next. I say that because historically that's what we've done, right? We've traded from 2055 and went all the way to 2264. That's what so everyone's like, oh, it's magic that your levels just do that. No, it's just like I play pivot points. So I look at where we've had prior resistance, we've broken through it. Where did we go to next? 2264, right? We went to it next. Then what happened once we pushed through it? When we came back to retest it, we pushed off of it again, right? It wasn't 2264, it was 2268. 4 pennies off, but I'll take that on a name like UPST. That's multi-million dollar market cap. I'll take those levels like that. But that's kind of what I look for in these levels. That's what I'm always looking for, guys. So let's take a look at some other names before we get going. One of the names that I want to talk to you guys about is Riot. We've talked about this one before. Now this is the daily time frame I want to talk here. This is another consolidation pattern, right? We're trading between $10.32 and we had one anomaly where we pushed out of there. I'm not going to count this candle, and $12, right? So basically, $1.70 is the range that we've had. We've had about 10% worth of range on UPST, which is pretty good to be able to trade that, right? I mean, if you buy calls down here at 1032 and we push all the way back up to 1287 in 2 days, we move 20% in 2 days on Riot, you're probably pretty happy with your call purchase. But what I want to talk about is the fact that we are getting consolidation pattern, and just like we talked about with UPST, what happens when we break down through this 1032 level? Where do we go to next? Well, we probably head back into the mid sevens. Or the $9 level, which would be a nice move of $1.32 on this name, which is probably like a 10% day down, which is huge, right? If you can move 10% on a name, that's massive for options premium. So I don't have my price alert set. I think I have an alert set here for a breakout above, because if we break this spot above again, I want to play to where we broke out last time, which is going to be right here at this like 1291 area. If we break 1291, I think this can turn into a weekly swing, right? If we break out of here, we push up to, the 1290 area where we got last time, right? The high here was 1290. That'll be the first target, right? First target's 1290. Once we get 1290, then we can assess and say, what does the daily candle look like? Is it a daily candle with a big wick like this one is? Or is it a bullish candle that looks something like this? Because if it looks like this, then we could potentially swing those contracts that we're in, depending on where we're at on the expiration side. If we have some days left, if this happens tomorrow, if it happens on Tuesday, we could swing those contracts into Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for the move back up into the $14 range, and that's where it could get pretty crazy. As far as gains go on a name like Riot that's got, a 50% short float. The short float on this is crazy. This name can move wildly, 15% here, 17% there. We've seen this name move like crazy, right? Like 11% there. 9%, 7%. This name usually has some pretty big days when it has big days, and it likes to move. So this is a name that I'll be watching, and I've got my price alert set there at like $11.86 to the upside. I'm going to set my price alert here at 1050 to the downside, just so I know. That's what I'm looking at on Riot. Now, I want to transition kind of back over into tech just a little bit, because I want to talk about the elephant in the room, and that's Netflix, guys. Again, inside day on this name. If you guys haven't noticed yet, there's a theme happening right now with inside days, and if you guys aren't familiar with what inside days are, take a look at Google right after the scan and look at inside days, how to play them. Are they bullish? Are they bearish? And I think you guys will be excited for what's cooking potentially in the markets with all of these inside names. Now, this is technical analysis 101. This is textbook technical analysis, right? Daily wedge, break out of the wedge. Down here, we're at 323. If you bought, let's say you bought 380 calls, that are 2 months out, you're saying, oh, well, it's $60 away. We're breaking out of this daily wedge. I'll go ahead and grab some 380 calls on Netflix for the potential run up there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days later, not even 2 weeks of trading, right? Just two normal weeks, we hit a high of 375.87, So you're $4.13 away from being in the money on 380 calls if you took those on Netflix 9 days later. Absolutely ridiculous move on Netflix here. We were up 9% on the day, a $31 move, 9% on the day. The low was 346 and the high was 375 on Thursday. Now, if we look and see how we traded on Friday, on the 30-minute, we really didn't have too much range, right? And this is what the inside day looks like on larger time frames. Here's the daily on Thursday, right? All the way down at 346, we push up to 375.87, and then on Friday, right, we trade in range. Right, we trade from 364 to 369, or 365 to 369, $4 worth of range. Okay, so if this range continues, potentially, this will be an actionable setup for me to play, right? If we just continue to trend in this range, this will be big, right? Because I think that we should hold this area. If we don't hold this area, then I think we go back to 352, right? Because we don't have a lot. There's not a lot of resistance that stopped us from moving all the way up here. This is going to be that next level, 352. Now, if we break to the upside, then we can look at playing 373.23 and then 375 and then 380 to the upside on Netflix. But this is a potential actionable setup for me. Again, the hourly is just kind of trending here, but we definitely have room up. And the next big level I have on Netflix is really that 400 spot. If we can get over 380, that's kind of what I'll be looking for, on Netflix. Now let's look at some other names that we typically play. And then we will jump into some of the chart requests that you guys potentially have. Mara is setting up again here on the daily, guys. You guys see this daily wedge, right? Daily wedge formation setting up on Mara. I think a breakout over probably like the $10 area, $9.90 on Mara. Let's call it 980, right? Over 986. Let me know when it gets over 986 because I think this is going to be a pretty big move back up on Mara. If Bitcoin starts to move, honestly, I haven't looked at Bitcoin to see what it's doing or where it's at. It's under that 27 and 28.5 area that we've had. You can see here we had a wedge on the daily on Bitcoin, fell down out of it, and moving back down, potentially now down to that 25 area. It looks like we could be heading back down. So this could be a nice short. Sorry, let's go back here on the main. This could be a nice short on Mara. Downside out of this wedge, back down into that 530 area if we fall back down. It's going to depend on again, price action. Price action leads everything. I don't know about coin. Take a look at coin, and then we'll jump into your guys' plays. Yeah, so here's a nice wedge on coin, right? There's a nice little wedge, semi-wedge pattern happening on coin on the daily time frame. Really nice rejection out of it. We pop back up and we rejected. You guys can see too how well that 61.51 level plays on the daily time frame. If we look at the 4 hour, right? If we look at extended. So you guys can see, right? Like when we came down underneath it, we got underneath, we reject, all the way back down. So coin back down to 54 could be the potential play here, back down to the downside on the hourly time frame, right? Like this is probably an area that could be, this could be a consolidation pattern on the hourly time frame that as soon as we break out of this could be a pretty nice move because we've been stuck in, essentially, if we take out this, this outlier up here of a day, on the 10th, outside of, May 10th, which was kind of in that wedge, we've been stuck between 54 and 61. So we've been stuck in about, $6 worth of range, $7 worth of range on coin. So this could be a nice move as well. All right, so let's jump into some of the things you guys want to take a look at. Costco is one, so that we'll talk about. That's on my list as well. I want to give you guys some chart request time as well. So let's take a look at PG. MJ wants to look at PG. Let's take a look at that. Procter & Gamble. Clean chart, no levels on it right now. So let's take a look and see what we got. He wants to look at the daily time frame. Daily below 152.36 break. 152.36. Yeah, let's take a look at that. Put a line here. 152. 152.36. That's a clean chart. Really clean chart, actually. I really like that, MJ, a lot, actually. On a daily time frame, this was actually a consolidation pattern, right? Like, we could say that this is daily consolidation. Really, I'd probably say there, right? Like, we probably got like a nice little outlier of a day here when we broke down through 154.39. We moved all the way down to a low of 153.58. But we do have some consolidation. We dropped down out of it. So this looks like it could be a really, really actionable short to the downside here. If we can lose this spot on PG 152.36, I like that enough. I like it enough to where I actually am going to set an alert at 152.59 and let me know when it's below that, because I'll know that we're coming down to that 152.36 level. So great eye there, PG. Hopefully you guys see why PG called that on his watch list. If you look, we came down to this area and then we got underneath of it and we rejected it, rejected kind of, gapped over it, came back down, now acting as support. So actionable setup for PG is definitely moved down below 152.36. JP Morgan, let's take a look at JP Morgan. I think Sunil has JP Morgan on his list as well, so we're killing two birds with one stone here. JP Morgan, he says weekly wedge. Let's take a look. Yeah, weekly is wedging here on JPM, right? I do see that. We started up here, we pushed all the way down, pushed up, came down, pushed up, came down. So this looks like it could be a really actionable setup for me on a weekly time frame. I don't know what the daily looks like. What do we look like on the daily time frame? Okay, daily. What about the 1 hour? 4 hour. So I'm just trying to see what this pattern looks like here to see if we have anything actionable to play on that. The weekly looks good though. I mean, this looks like a weekly wedge for sure. I like this. I think I like the PG play a little bit better, but I think this could move, right? If we get some positive news and the market start to move, we could see, JP Morgan start to push back up, despite what kind of happened earlier. With all the banking, I don't want to call it the banking crisis, but what happened with all the banking names when we started to see a lot of sell pressure come into those banks. CVX, weekly wedge. Yeah, that one is wedging on the weekly as well. We do have a wedge here, and it looks like it could be potentially trying to break down. We've had one test here, two tests, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tests now under this level on the weekly. This looks like this could be an actionable setup to potentially take some, month, 2 month outputs. And this is kind of a trade that you don't really have to worry too much about it. You kind of put like a 20% stop loss on it and let it work. You don't have to manage this and look at it every single day or every single minute of the day like you'd have to when you have weekly contracts. But this looks very good as well on a weekly time frame. MJ, I like that as well for a weekly swing. Understand that the weekly time frames, guys, offer better opportunity for you to swing 2 month, 3 month out contracts because you can give yourself time. You can buy time. You can purchase basically the theta instead of playing the cheaper weekly options that have the chance to go really volatile, but they come at a lower cost because time decay is a huge part of the weekly contracts, whereas if you play the monthlies, you're paying for the premium on that is the fact that you're paying for the time. But I like this on CVX for sure. MA about to break an extremely long weekly consolidation, so MA could be another swing that you guys could look to get into. Weekly consolidation. Yeah, I mean, this is... I don't know if it's huge weekly consolidation. What I would say is that MA on the weekly, actually, maybe not consolidation, but what I would say is maybe we have a chance. Do I have levels here? No. On the weekly to actually get over 391 and push up towards 400 all-time high on MA. But this is where we've rejected in the past. So this is one that I'd watch on the weekly here, MJ, that I would watch for a buyer exhaustion on the weekly time frame. Like I'd look for a big wick up and some buyer exhaustion. Now we got a little bit of a wick up here, but we didn't get a big wick like we got here, like we got here with the red candle. We actually, did pretty decent on this weekly candle. But for me personally, right, like what I'd be looking for, is probably a weekly candle close over 360.65. Once that happens, then I think you could probably get some 400 calls, maybe even 420 calls 2 months out and kind of let those ride and see what happens with them. I think that could be an actual setup for someone to potentially take. And one that I'll personally look to take actually myself on MA if we get that weekly close. V. Sunil wants to look at V and Costco. Let's take a look at Visa. What do you want to look at, Sunil, on V? Anything in particular? I mean, on the daily time frame, this is another one I think that looks like kind of a little bit of flat top resistance here on the daily. I can give you my opinion of what I kind of think of it first, right? Now, like we are over this area, like we'll put a level up here. Let's just put one here, right? So this is a spot like on V, I think that potentially we could also maybe make an argument that we have something like this going on. And again, this could be an outlier. I like to use outliers as sorry, let me make this perfect. There we go, right? So this is kind of what I'm looking at on Visa, or what I would be looking at on Visa, right? So if we look back at NVIDIA, let me jump to NVIDIA real quick and just remind you guys, right? Like NVIDIA, remember we had, it's kind of a little hard to see, but hopefully you guys can see these purple lines. We had horizontal resistance on NVIDIA's daily. We had a trend up on the daily, and then what happened when we broke that, we pushed up, in 3 days, we made massive moves, right? And if we go back and look, you can see horizontal resistance, right? Same thing happened on Apple. If we go back and look at Apple's chart. Did I take it off here? On the daily? Or was it the hourly on Apple? I can't remember when that was. Maybe it was the daily. Was that the breakout spot? Anyway, I thought I had a level on Apple where I was like playing this data. I can't remember when it was one of these on Apple. I'll have to go back and look at it, see exactly when that was. It might have been here actually on Apple. It might have been this. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that on NVIDIA, what we're getting here, or on V, is kind of what we're getting on NVIDIA, right? We had this like trend up into a horizontal resistance. So this is not necessarily a horizontal consolidation pattern, but this is a name that's consolidating. It's just trending up, but we're pushing closer to overhead resistance. So as you guys can see, like we're getting tighter, right? Range. Now we're getting tight. Why are we getting tight? Because we have overhead pressure up top. Sellers are active up there, pressing us here. But when those sellers let go, they're going to try and short. They're going to have to cover their shorts. Longs are going to push and make that move over, right? Well, V, kind of the same thing's happening here on V, right? On the daily time frame, buyers are pushing. Well, now you can see we're starting to trade sideways on V, right? Why? Because we have overhead resistance and we have sellers that are active above. So if we break out over this 235 spot on V, we could get a really nice move up to like that 249 area. So what I'm going to do is actually set my price alerts here at, I want to set them at about 235 is where I want to set my price alert. So I'm going to set an alert 235 above, and then I know that if we break out 235, that could be a nice daily breakout play, especially 235.28, and we could see a really, really nice move back up on V, potentially to around this spot right here. And I'll go ahead and put that level just so I know what level I'm going to be playing to. Looking back here on the daily time frame, you guys see where we rejected here. You know I like to use those candle bodies, 238.22. So we potentially have $3.22 of upside range on a name like V if we break out over this horizontal resistance. Nice look on that, Sunil. Costco we'll talk about. Let's talk about Costco. Costco is just, this is a weekly chart, guys, that is ready to explode. I think if the markets go and SPY pushes over 420, Costco is a name that I think is a great add to any long-term port. Specifically, I use Costco so much. Personally, I know we shop there a lot. I love Costco. And I really like Costco. But on a weekly time frame, technical analysis perspective, this is a name that has broken out of the weekly trend, and we back tested it on Friday. So as long as we can hold, I'd say 497, Costco is ready to make that move, I think. And over 500, we really get popping on Costco. So maybe that 500 break could send us. First target I'm going to be looking for on Costco is about 530. Over that, I'm going to be looking for about 565 on Costco. And then over that, I'd be looking for that 595, 600 level on Costco. But yes, I agree with Sunil. It is a ticking time bomb. If you guys look back at the history of Costco's chart, we've never had a weekly pattern that has consolidated at this level. Now, we've had other weekly patterns that have consolidated, but they are much smaller consolidation patterns, right? Like we went from 230 down to about 206. So $24 worth of consolidation at inception, then we broke down out of it, right? Here's another weekly pattern, right? We went from 308 all the way down to about 263, right? So at the peak of this, right, we had about $50 worth of initial at inception range of consolidation into the wedge. We broke out and we pushed up. Okay, now this time on Costco, what do we have, right? Well, we were up here at 606. Then we came down here to basically 410. So about $200 worth of range at inception of this wedge pattern. And now we're getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And again, this is textbook technical analysis. You can't get much better than this Costco trend. We've been talking about this for a couple weeks now. This is a name that I think when this name starts to break out, we will know because we're going to see a massive 10% day to the upside on Costco. That's going to be our signal to get long on Costco and potentially play weeklies or play a leap on Costco if you want that, kind of stress-free trade. Just be prepared that you're going to have to spend a little bit more on those premiums because you're buying the time on those contracts. Meta, Joey, let's take a look at Meta. Meta is an interesting one that I like as well. Meta weekly is pretty wild if you ask me. Meta's on the way, man. On the weekly time frame, Meta is on the way. If we can clear this spot here, if we can clear basically 250 on the weekly time frame, I think we make the move back up to 294. 250 on the weekly is the key for me. A weekly candle close over 250, I think we make that move back up. But I mean, on the weekly, we have just been absolutely printing on Meta since that 88 drop in November of 2022. 88, now back to 245. Just imagine buying a few shares of Meta at $88, what you'd be up right now. Crazy, crazy, crazy. One thing, guys, that I've seen a lot happen on Twitter, there's a lot of perma bears. Don't let some of these guys get into your heads. If you guys, it's not financial advice, but one thing I do for myself, if I plan on holding names for a very long time, it doesn't matter what's going on today. Right? Like if I don't have any intentions, like I see some people like, oh, I'm going to sell my 401k. Like I'm doing this. It's like all those people, like it's just, I don't know. To me, it's a little crazy, right? Like I get it, trying to go cash and trying to time the market. But if you could time the market that perfectly, you probably wouldn't be sitting here trying to master the option side of things, right? If you could time the market with that amount of certainty, I'd love to have you on speed dial to help me out. it's just not realistic. But one thing is certain is that the market always goes back up, right? So there is something called DCA, dollar cost averaging, that you can do on your long-term ports. This is not a long-term class, but I just wanted to let you guys know there's a lot of noise on FinTwit. Stick to your plan, guys. No matter if it's me, someone else, stick to your plan in anything that you do. I think you'll be much better served to stick to your own plans. What price targets do you see for upside for SPY, pun intended? We talked about this earlier, but 420, 425, 430, 445, and then 460 an all-time high. MJ says, I really like BRKA on the daily. Am I too late to get in on the daily? Wow, that was a nice consolidation pattern too. Wow. See that daily retest that we just got on BRKA, right? Came down to it, touched it, and pushed back up. I don't think you're too late, MJ. I would have rather gotten in on that initial break, if I'm being honest, but we can see what happens tomorrow. But that's an A+ break there on the daily. What's the weekly look like on the weekly? Yeah, I see the weekly got that weekly candle close over, and so now, it looks like the weekly's going to potentially come up here and test that 513.1 area, and then above that, right? I think it probably makes that move potentially back up into the 530 area. Meow, no worries, it's all recorded. So if you go to the YouTube channel on Moneyline and then you go to the live section, you'll be able to review the whole thing that you missed. Every Sunday at 9 o'clock we do these, though, for those of you that aren't sure about that. Costco's a ticking time bomb, absolutely. Celestina, let's talk about 5 on the daily. She wants to look at 5. 5 below. Way below $5 on the daily time frame. Don't mind me, I'm just, this is just me. This is my inner artist trying to figure out what type of pattern we could have here on 5. Ooh, we could have a consolidation breakdown here. First PT. Here. Second PT. Here. Third. There. Okay, so this is what we could be getting on 5 on the daily time frame. Okay, so that was a good example, guys. I want to show you how I kind of came up with those levels, what I looked at, right? At first, I was like, okay, do we have a wedge here on 5? Do we have something we could play? Not really seeing anything from a wedge perspective. I mean, you could come back here and say that you might have something, right? But this is where I think people get lost because they're like, they try to do too much with the chart. It's just like, I don't think that's an actionable, like that's way too far back. That's 2020. That's not a trend line I'd be worried about. This is the weekly time frame. Sorry. We were looking at the weekly. Sorry. Weekly setup that I'm watching here. You're right, Celestina. It does look like it broke range. It does look here like we broke range and it's heading down to the downside. What I'd want to see though is a candle push below this prior candle when we broke that range. We fell all the way from 192 down to 188. And in full disclosure, I'm not sure how 5 below trades as far as options go. Sometimes some of these names are better to trade equities, meaning it's better to short the stock. It's better to buy the stock instead of buy options. because it just doesn't move as well. I've never traded 5, so I'm not sure how this, how this typically moves. It makes sense that we bounced where we did though, because if you look, right, like this is a high that we came up to. The low here on this candle was 188.91. The high here was 188.67. So 23 cents off there, 24 cents. But on the weekly time frame, like if we go to the weekly, this looks like a really, really clean setup on the weekly time frame, guys. And hopefully you saw how I found these levels. You can find these levels the exact same way if you're looking at an hourly, 30-minute, 4-hour chart, whatever time frame you want to look at. Like it's the exact same setup. Consolidation pattern. Now I found this 183.69 level by looking at how we've traded around a certain level, within, let's say the last, on the weekly. I want to look at relativity, right? So I want to look at the last, like, let's say a little bit over a year. So if we come back here, we can see, right? Yeah, sorry, I'm just answering someone. If you can see, we come back here. If we come back, right, we see we have rejection at 183.69. Then we have rejection again. Then we have rejection again. Then we have rejection again. Again. And then what happened? Well, we got a support resistance flip, right? This actually looks like a cup and handle. There's a cup. Here's the handle, and then we push up. Again, I'm not a cup and handle trader, but it kind of looks like a cup and handle pattern. But we had multiple rejections, right? We had like 6 rejections. And then what happened? Prior resistance, now support, confirmed twice as support, and then we pushed all the way up from 183.69 all the way up to 211. Okay, now this is how people can, really make money swing trading, or just finding the technical patterns. You can find these same exact patterns on the daily time frame, on the 4-hour, on the 1 hour, all of these time frames are equal, and I want to show you guys how I find these levels. So on the weekly time frame, again, this is going to be my first stop because I just pointed out why that was going to be my first level to the downside. My next level that I want to find on the downside is a level that we've traded to in the past. We've held it. I want to find a level that we've traded from in the past and pushed up to our next level at 183.69. Well, this is one right here, right? We held this as support. We pushed up. It's resistance. We came back down. We broke it, right? So we broke this. Was support. Now it's going to be resistance, right? It should be. And it is. Right here. And right here. And right here. And then when we got back over, what happened? Prior resistance now becomes support. And where do we go once it becomes support? Right back to 183.69. This is how I find my levels, and this is how I like to teach my level, level creation. How did I find my level below that? Well, when we broke down through 149.38, where's the next spot that we bounced at and we found some support? 110.72, right? We came down here once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, then we pushed back, right? We pushed all the way back to 149.38, came back down, caught another bid, pushed back up, 149.38, resistance, resistance, now support, push up, resistance, 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 now support, push up. We're coming back down here, right? So if we fall down through 183.69, where do you think we're going to trade to next? 149.38. And if we fall through 149.38, where do you think we go to next? 110.72. That's how I find my levels, and I hope that helps you guys. I hope this level creation helps you guys. We've been on live now for about an hour and 5 minutes. There's a couple setups that I like this week, but I think, as always, Monday, I'm going to be a little bit more patient on Monday. The biggest thing I think that we've noticed in the Sunday scan tonight is that we have a lot of tech names that had inside days on Friday, which means that there could be some big breakouts that happen over those inside days, over the high of those inside days. That'll be a top watch for me going into tomorrow. I will likely be off on Tuesday. I have an event that I have to go to on Tuesday, but B and Darth got you guys covered on Tuesday. Hopefully the Sunday scans help you guys. Again, your P&Ls are really made during the weekends, guys. This is where I want you to really hone in on your craft, because all of your trades that you take during the week should become natural, right? We should, during the week when we find a trade, be like, yeah, we knew that we had inside days going into the week. We knew that there was a lot of consolidation happening, right? We knew that if SPY got over 420, we were going to head to 424 and then 430 and then 445. We knew all these things. We talked about these things. We talked about UPST having such a strong candle over that level. right? We talked about the potential breakout on V. We talked about the potential breakdown on Procter & Gamble. We're talking about the potential breakdown here on Five Below. All of your trades should come natural. You should never find yourself during the week like taking a trade because you're bored or because it looks, like, oh, everyone else is getting it, I'm going to get into it, right? Like, stick to your plan, stick to your risk management. And like I said, if you guys learn how to do what we just did right here, if you learn how to do this support and resistance stuff and technicals, if you learn what consolidation patterns are, if you learn how to identify what a wedge is, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know how much money you could have made on Netflix on this daily wedge break, right? Daily wedge break and massive explosion. Tons and tons of money to be made. The only thing that's going to stop you guys from being successful is you and not following your rules, sizing in way too heavy, and having no risk management. You guys, we call massive trades, we call great trades, great ideas in the room every single day. We're going to have some red trades. I had a red trade on Friday, ended the day green, right? Like, it happens. I've had 2 red days in the month of May, just 2. The reason I've had 2 red days and not more is because I've been able to keep my losses small and I don't oversize into certain things, right? Like I take my setups when I see my setups, which allows me the opportunity to potentially, make great money on A+ setups. If they don't work out, I cut them for a loss and I come back to the desk and I find another setup that works. If you guys can do that, you guys are going to do so well, and you're going to be able to do things that you never even imagined doing. You don't have to make $100,000 in a day. You don't have to make 10 grand in a day. If you make $200 a day for 20 trading days, which is how many you have in the month, that's $4,000 a month. Like, what could you do with an extra $4,000 a month? Could you pay your mortgage, pay your rent, maybe buy a new car, go on a vacation, pay off some credit card debt? You know what I mean? Like, put things in perspective, guys. You don't have to make $1,000 a day. You don't have to make 2 grand a day, or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 100. You just don't have to. I want everyone to eat at our table. I want everyone to win. The only way you guys are going to win, though, is if you stick to your plan and you stick to the risk management. We're going to find the trades. We're going to find the setups. Like I always say, I'm gonna give you guys the sauce. It's up to you to make the pasta. But we're going to make the sauce every single week. You guys are going to have the ideas. You're going to have the thesis. You're going to have the charts. You're going to have everything. It's up to you to execute, and you alone. And when things don't go your way, it's going to be up to you to cut things and to keep your losses small, manageable, and then hold on to those winners as long as you can and ride the trend when we're playing a trend play. So that's all I got for you guys. I hope everyone has a great night tonight. I will see you guys tomorrow in pre-market huddle. We'll see what setups we have in the morning once the market's open. I haven't looked at futures, to be honest, so I'm not sure if we are up right now on futures or if we are down. But again, 420 is the big spot on SPY. I think that is the spot that we probably play to tomorrow. And if we get over SPY at 420, I think that's where we see that move to 424 on SPY. So appreciate you guys being on here and letting me ramble. Really appreciate everyone being here and listening in. I hope these are helpful, to you guys. I hope that you find value in these. As always, if you have questions, please let me know. But take a shot at trying to chart out some of these weekly timeframes, these daily timeframes. Drop them in the watch list channel. And then, tag me in it, and I'll take a look at the charts. You guys see on the watch list channel, there's a lot of guys that are doing that now. MJ is one who's doing it, very, very well. Jira Trades is another one that's doing it very, very well. So give it a shot if you guys haven't. And like Joey says, let's kill it this week. Let's get after it. I will see you guys tomorrow in pre-market. Have a great evening.